Africa will never get out of poverty until we change this economic model that we follow of exporting raw materials. There is no raw material based economy which will ever prosper and change the lives of its own people. It's just impossible with how it's set up, because at the end of the day, you are exporting raw materials and processed products and finished products. But at the end of the day, you need to import those back for your day-to-day uses, and it is going to be 10 times more expensive than the value that you have gotten from exporting those raw materials. So you are chasing your own tail. You will never get to succeed. You will never get to prosper. That's just how it works. By not manufacturing final products, by not engaging in manufacturing yourself, you are mixing out on a huge number of job opportunities that manufacturing brings. Manufacturing produces more jobs than extraction of raw materials, and those jobs that are provided by the extraction of raw materials are always low paying jobs as compared to manufacturing, because of course manufacturing requires more skilled labor and obviously pays well. Let's put this into perspective. Let's put some example. The extraction of cobalt in the DRC. The people of Congo who are working in these mines, who are working to extract these minerals, they are paid little to nothing. Most of the value is exported as the cobalt become processed in China and obviously goes on to make those giant batteries that you find in electrical vehicles, which would then generate trillions and trillions of dollars. But as compared to the Congo would have benefited nothing, like literally a fraction. Maybe we're talking about or a couple $1 billion. And how much of that will end up trickling down to the average person? Little to nothing. They will never afford to buy that electrical vehicle. Let's talk about cocoa, which is most of it is really produced in Africa and exported to the whole world. The billions of dollars that are generated by the chocolate industry does not really get to the farmer. The farmer only benefits a tiny fraction of about 5 to 10% of the total revenue generated by the chocolate industry. At the end of the day, imagine if that farmer only received that much. What about if that farmer has workers? I mean, they will only literally be working for absolutely under $5 a day. Same as coffee. I mean, the coffee industry is a huge industry, tens and tens of billions of dollars, but compared to the fraction that the whole continent gets from this industry, from the total value of the coffee industry, we are talking about 3 to 4 billion for the whole continent. Imagine if the farmer himself, how much does he get? Imagine the workers that works under this, the coffee farmer. At the end of the day, they will literally gain maybe we're talking about $2 to $3 a day. That is poverty at its best, and it will never change until we learn to start processing these products and engage in manufacturing, and then create more valuable jobs. And of course, if we extract raw materials, export them, and the first world nations add value upon them, and we get a fraction of the profits, which means our country doesn't have enough capital to engage into developmental projects. And then what do we do? And then we end up borrowing in order to develop to engage in any developmental projects, be it roads, be it any infrastructure projects that we need to engage in as a country. So what happens then? You are stuck in debt. That's why African countries have huge sums of debt, because we don't have money. We are extracting raw materials and gaining little to nothing from it, and at the end of the day, that would not be sufficient to meet our budgets and our needs for our countries. At the end of the day, you have to borrow in order to do the bare basics of infrastructure development. And of course, and if you only rely on extracting raw materials and exporting them, which means your economy is not diversified and it's not resilient to any global changes, to anything that changes in the global market. It will rock your economy and might even destroy your economy, because the demand of these natural resources fluctuates, and also the prices of these commodities like crude oil and commodities like coffee, tea, and they are not it's not up to us. It is determined by the stock markets, and at the end of the day, if that goes down, it means our income also goes down. So we are not resilient and we are not stable, and we also cannot determine the prices of those commodities. And your economy is very, very prone to being manipulated and controlled by things like sanctions, and you're forced to take certain foreign policy positions because you have no choice, because they can threaten not to buy those raw materials from you and rather source them somewhere else. So if your economy is reliant on one means of production, it means that those first world countries have so much control over what happens in your country. At the end of the day, they detect what you do in your country. If you don't do as they wish, they will just threaten to sanction you and stop purchasing those raw materials from you and buy from a different country, and then at the end of the day, your economy crashes. You have no choice than to bend. And this is basic economics. I'm sure even a high school graduate would understand this kind of economics. This does not need professors. And people would ask themselves, so why is Africa stuck in this cycle of remaining dependent on the extraction and exporting of raw materials? And let's have a conversation down in the comment section. Can you answer the question, why is Africa stuck in the cycle of depending on raw materials?